Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On the Curbs IndyCar Edition. I'm your host, Nate Woods, and I'm joined once again with my co-host, Thiemo Albers-Daly. Timo, how we doing?
Pretty good, thank you, Nate. How about yourself?
Well, things here in Indianapolis are picking up. We've got IndyCar practice at the Motor Speedway this week.
It feels like it starts earlier every year. It's like Christmas. It just starts earlier and earlier and earlier.
That's right, yeah. But we had a race this weekend to discuss. It was our first points paying race at the Thermal Club. And I think we were waiting to see how this was going to turn out after what we witnessed last year at Thermal Club with the $1 million challenge. And I will say that the uh, the race was better this year, but still left a lot to be desired, I feel like.
I found myself with a mini Nate on my shoulder for much of the coverage that weekend. And I like the track and I like the location because I get very kind of PS2 video game vibes from it. And it seems fun in that respect. But like you say, the lack of people that can come and watch it. I mean, they said in commentary that they had some veterans there that they got free tickets for, and I kind of thought they must be in a VIP area or something because I don't know where on earth they're going to actually be sitting. And you saw one grandstand, kind of, and even that wasn't totally full. And I'm just
Yeah.
questioning that, and I was talking to a colleague at Everything F1, and they were saying that you can still only buy a full weekend ticket. If there'd been an option for a single day race ticket, they'd have been there and they'd have driven the
Mhm.
5 hours it took to get there, which 5 hours, I don't know if I would have done that, but you definitely wouldn't if you lived only 5 hours away, I don't think, for
Yeah.
thermal. But, you know, it would have been nice to have that option. And I think they're still trying to figure those kinks out. And as we'll get into in the one bit of news we've got in a second, the issues they had trackside, these things all just add up and you go, if you're going to keep coming back here, and if these issues are pretty common threads that can follow through, you want to sort that out. Otherwise, what's the point in going there? It's nice to have a non-championship race there because I can see then why you don't have to deal with all that as much. But then figure out what you want from it and lean into that rather than this.
Yeah.
So I find myself enjoying it, but not, but enjoying it, but not. And you're just kind of, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. I I was critical of this track last year. And people that listened to last year's show from the $1 million challenge might remember how I compared this track to the old Caesar's Palace parking lot F1
Yes.
track in the early 80s. And it shape wise, it's almost identical.
I did
And
see that from the top of a couple of the graphics and think, this is, I'm getting the flashbacks here from Nathan last year.
so, it's a beautiful setting for a track. It's definitely geared towards a little bit more well-to-do clientele, I feel like, from a spectator standpoint. I would I don't want to see it go away quite yet. I mean, it takes a couple of years for a race to really gain its footing, I feel like, but it might be time to cut this one loose from the schedule already. So, but we had some interesting action at the track before the race in the practices and qualifying leading up to the race.
Yes. Was again, I think this is why we were a bit confounded when the race happened because we had all this kind of setup going for it, and there was all this uncertainty. You heard Graham Rahal laughing on the radio, going, "I'm not sure what's going to happen here because these
Yeah.
tires are not lasting long." And everyone's like, "It's great that you have this nervous energy as a driver because that gives you something that not a lot of other series have. I don't think in that sense that normally you'd hear drivers really complaining about that sort of thing." And there'd be a big complaint investigation, and they're like, "Oh, this is going to be fun. We don't know what's going to happen here." And then, like you say, didn't quite get there. But the biggest
But
thing for me
one
was,
driver that was certainly probably a little nervous was Robert Schwartzman.
yeah, I was just about to say, there's one driver that just cannot catch a break at the moment, and Boy, oh boy, that
going back and listening to the radio of him saying, "Hey, my my seat is wet," and then it turning out to be ethanol spewing out into the cockpit. That's scary, and
yeah,
that's a real problem that team's got to figure out. I mean, you burned a car down to the ground almost, and then you spent an entire night at the track trying to rebuild the car. And kudos to that team for even getting that car ready in time to finish the weekend.
yeah. I mean, Paul Boxton saying in free practice too, if you can just qualify anywhere other than 27, because he's already having a good weekend. And the fact that, oh, yeah, as we'll get to later in the race, the fact that both cars were just able to finish, have a clean race, not DNF, that was all you could really hope for them. But
Yeah,
yeah, that is. I was writing an article on Thermal Club's weekend, and the title for the PREMA section was just "Baptisms of Fire Continues." Literally, it's like you can't make this up.
yeah. Well, and another issue that we had at the track on race day was not driver related, but broadcast related. I think it stands to be mentioned here at the
Yeah, I think
beginning.
everyone was doubting themselves. I think going, "Oh, what have I pressed? I've pressed the wrong button on the remote or on the laptop. What's going on? What's is the internet gone? No, no, it's actually IndyCar."
Yeah, and I mentioned it before. When I watch the race, I have the race on TV, and then I have IndyCar radio network playing on my phone,
So
and
everything just boom.
both of them went out within just a few seconds, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. And it jumped commercial, and it was an extra long commercial, and then it went to NASCAR on Fox, and I get a message from you like, hey, are you seeing the IndyCar race right now?
Well, again,
Sky
like I say,
Sky
I've
Sports
assumed
is
I've done
blank.
something without realizing, thinking, "Oh, the Americans probably it's just Sky or something." But no, everyone's in the same boat, and you say about switching to NASCAR, it just felt very much like you're watching your streaming service go, because you watch this, you will like this, and just let's hope we can distract you with this for a minute before while we try and figure out what the hell's going on here.
What did you guys get to see in lieu of IndyCar for those 10 laps?
We got the same five ads repeated for like
Oh
15
no.
minutes.
Oh no. At least we got
So
to switch it. NASCAR was running at the same time, and so we had to switch over to that. But yeah, it was odd. I've heard conflicting stories about what happened, but it was definitely a pretty big issue there at the track because timing and scoring was also having issues once we came back.
yeah,
So
did notice that, and from what I've gathered, it's not uncommon in the general area for weather and general geography and environmental factors to play a part in power outages and this sort of thing. And you'd think as a community, and especially one like Thermal Club, they'd maybe do something about that and look into it a bit more. And then if you're India or Fox go, you can't say you didn't know that that was a thing, surely. So you'd maybe take a
yeah.
couple of steps to combat that. But no, apparently. So
But
again, this is what I'm saying. If you want to keep this going for future years, maybe
uh,
look into it at least.
yeah, I saw a lot of people online mad at Fox for switching over to the NASCAR race during the outage. I'm like, this is not
What are you
Fox's
supposed to watch?
problem. This isn't Fox's problem. This is a territory problem where the track's at. And uh, Fox did exactly what I would have done. You've got other racing
What I
product
wish Sky would have done.
going on at the same time. You just switch over to that and problem solved until the problem solved.
I'd have taken Chinese F4 over the same five ads that are repeated over and over again. Just give me something else race
Yeah.
wise. I'll be very easily satisfied. Just don't give me adverts. But there we go.
But the racing we did
Needless as
get to
needs to be done.
see, yeah, the racing we did get to see, minus the 10 or so laps in the middle, um, you know, there's really, honestly, there's not a ton to report until we get towards the end of the race.
It
The
was.
race was clean. Um, you didn't have a whole lot of um,
I say there are no cautions. I think first time
no
since a race
caution.
in 2020, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's kind of
exactly. Yeah,
mad.
and you know, short of the turn five caution that we had during the first lap of the last race in St. Pete, that was the only
Mm.
caution flag that we had in that race. And, I was thinking about this morning as I was getting ready. I'm like, this might be the fastest season we ever have if they continue out there
Yeah.
not causing cautions. And so,
I'm now just having my Vietnam moment of Long Beach fountain flashbacks going. You shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have said that.
well, maybe that'll be a lot different race, but
Credence Clearwater Revival's coming in the background now.
um, well, the start of the race was very tight, and I had when they were showing the drop of the green flag and all those cars bunched up, I thought, man, that is a really tight start. That's what race starts should look like. And
And again, you look at it from last year when they did the $1 million challenge and how tight less cars in terms of like went into the first couple of turns and the chaos you got out of that. You're thinking,
yeah,
oh,
yep,
but nothing
exactly.
happened, and you're
Nothing
going, oh,
happened. And we hit uh, Devlin DeFrancesco. He got into McLaughlin and uh, on the start of the
although
race,
he has
but
a different view of that.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, but he did receive a drive-through penalty for that for avoidable contact. But um, Marcus Ericsson had an issue with new tires, but was able to keep it going and really just it was just kind of a bland race
Yeah, it
until we got to
was.
about the last 10, 15 laps, it felt like.
Yeah, again, like we were saying about with practice and qualifying, you have the McLarens on the front row. You've got Team Penske way out of position. You've got Glow obviously always in the mix, and you've got PREMA just literally burning in the background, going, "We've got
Yeah,
the tires." Just a whole kind of chest of unknowns there, and you're going, "This really could be anything," and it was by definition anything, but it was just the one anything we didn't think it would be because it was just a lot tamer than anyone, including all the drivers and teams, probably thought. And you go, oh, hmm. We're going to really look back at the data from this race and the tires and everything and go, how did we go from this to this? Because
this.
it
Yep.
makes sense, but really doesn't at the same time.
Yeah. One thing that was spoken a lot about during the race was hybrid overheating. Last year when we got the hybrid system going, a lot of the races that we went to, and I can't think of any off the top of my head that we had with the hybrid system where it was hot. And they were talking about how hot it was there at Thermal Club this weekend, and we were having overheating issues with the hybrid system.
Hmm.
And
But
obviously well publicized with Scott McLaughlin having issues where he had to sit on pit road for several laps, getting blowers blown through radiators and across the hybrid
very
system.
disappointed a group of people didn't come along with giant Japanese fans and just start opening the car. I thought there's a missed opportunity there.
And there was one point where, during the broadcast, they announced that it was Christian Rasmussen that IndyCar was asking to pull in, but I think going back and looking at the stops, I believe it was Callum Ilott that was having
Would
issues.
explain why he dropped back as far as he
Yes.
did. I did wonder
Yeah.
how that happened.
And during the broadcast, they even mentioned it was during the IndyCar radio broadcast. One of the broadcasters was uh, very vocal about his displeasure with the hybrid system, and actually quoted saying, "I wish we never would have started using them." And I
Which I
think
think
we're
is a little
starting to.
harsh.
Well, yes and
It's
no, but
it's it's the first race we've had massive issue with it, and massive by comparison has not been that big when you look at the time that we've had them so far. We've had a couple of niggling issues last season, but not too much. And I don't know until we have a lot more for the rest of the season if this is going to be a recurrent issue or not.
well, I mean, we had Will Power that had issue at the season finale last year that essentially turned what was supposed to be an epic showdown, turned it into okay, we know who's going to win.
As I say, you could blame
So,
the lot on a seatbelt as well, though.
well, that's true, yeah. But this isn't. I don't think this is the first issue that we've seen with the hybrids. I think it's a different issue that we've seen with the hybrids, and I think once we get into the month of May here in Indianapolis, where it is traditionally very warm. Um, it'll be interesting to see how these hybrids do. But you know,
Well, I think this is also the situation we expected when it was first introduced, because normally when you get a new system of any kind, you have problems immediately. And so when it came in, we had, I think it was Scott Dixon, had trouble initially, but then was still able to get going in the debut race that they were had. I think it was at Mid Ohio, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And he was still able to run the full race. It was just basically a testing session for him, but that was essentially it. And we
Mhm.
had problems here and there, but nothing to the scale that we thought we would have. And now we're getting it, and it's kind of not unexpected, but it's just very delayed. So again, it's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on how they sort that out, because obviously you only know about problems and how to deal with them properly once you've had them. So when you don't have them, you don't know what to deal with as much.
Yeah.
So you can take steps, but you don't know to the extent with which you need to take steps. So
Yeah.
it's this awkward thing of you need to go through it in order to deal with it.
Yeah. As I mentioned at the start, this was a fairly mundane race until the last 10, 15 laps. And Alex Palou put on a masterclass, him and his team both. I would love to give Alex Palou all the credit. I would give him 90% of the credit, but a chunk of the credit has to go to the team and the strategist. I mean, they got the tire strategy exactly right and got him the absolute best tires for the end of the race. And he was able to take just massive amounts of time out of the lead that Pato Ward had spent pretty much the entire race building.
Yeah, it was mad. You think, what was it, 11 seconds he had
Yeah,
in hand over Palou, and that was when Lundgaard was still between the two of them.
right.
Um, and he hunted Lundgaard down. Had a little bit of fun with him. It felt like he probably could have got past him sooner. Now that we know what we know after what he did to Lundgaard, but
Yeah,
it just had this really nice moment of, oh, I'm just going to have a bit of fun with that, and some great corner to corner, wheel to wheel action they were doing to do them,
yeah,
and then just jumps up off the road, goes and hunts down a wall, gets past him as if it's the easiest thing he's ever done, and then doesn't just take off into the lead. He kind of has a superpower speedster moment and just
yeah,
gone. And
yeah. He really was.
the only reason he didn't get further was because it's team like you don't really need to, and he's clever enough to know that he doesn't need to, and he's not got such a big ego on him that he needs to. He's already dominated, but he doesn't need to annihilate even further. The guy's dead. There's nothing
Yeah,
else to get from this. And the fact that he caught up to Palou in, not sorry, Palou Award in, what was it, 6 laps, that 11 seconds or so, was
yeah,
just insane, because you're watching it going, does Award have a problem? No, this isn't a Russell Norris situation in China where we can understand how this is happening, and that's going to get
right.
quite tight at the end. He is just the Flash right now.
Yeah. And he, I mean, it was, I don't want to say it was a perfect race for him because if it had been a perfect race, obviously he would have started on the pole and just left everybody in the dust like he did the last 7, 8 laps of the race. But you mentioned, I think he slowed down once, he got that comfortable lead. He came up behind who was Nolan Siegel and
Mm.
David Malukas that were out running for position to stay on the lead lap, and I think he came up behind them, and he could have very easily passed those guys, but so you know what? I'll let them have their battle. I'll just sit back and watch and
Yeah,
coast
it's
this
kind of
thing to
be
the
good.
end.
It was close, and then he just back off a
Yeah,
little bit, and you should kind
yeah,
of. It was why I thought with Lingard he probably could have got past sooner, but he's just playing with his food essentially at that point, and
yeah,
you're going, this is going to be an interesting one to try and figure out how the hell anyone else beats you. We've got two solutions that have not worked, and we'll get to those in a bit. And now we've got to figure something out in the next 2 weeks to try again, and sort of throwing an actual fountain at him. I'm not sure what you're going to be able to do.
that's
But
right.
the fact, like you say, he got 6.1 seconds ahead of the Ward by the end.
Yeah,
It's just kind of mad. And then what was it, a further 13 seconds back to Lundgaard in third place, and you just go, you'd think that the Aaron McLarens were kind of backmarker cars at that point, and it's been one of those crazy races where only one of the dominant drivers has survived some kind of chaos that you missed during the 10 laps that they were off air,
yeah,
and kind of you've got PREMA. They've just somehow found their way into second and third, and they're like, "We're happy with this. We're going to stick here. We're not going to be mad about this lead built up." But it's Aaron McLaren. You go, something wrong there, and like you say, it's not all Palou. It's the team just working so well together. But I think in commentary they pointed out that this is also a driver that's had a contract briefly with Arrow McLaren, and the whole fallout from that is
Mhm.
still very much ongoing. And this is rubbing salt in the wound massively to that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, Alex Palou, I mean, he pulled out what 9 second lead over uh Award at the end and ended up taking the checkers.
Right.
This was his 13th win and only 86 starts.
I'm still getting used to that with IndyCar and how impressive that is, but I can understand from your facial expression that that's not too shabby.
That's pretty good. Yeah. You got, I mean, he's been in the series now for many years, but he's still young. I mean,
Mm.
you look at how long drivers in IndyCar can last now. You
Well,
know,
yeah, I mean, I think that the quote I quite liked during practice was that Scott Dixon's 25th year in the sport, and he's
right?
still learning.
Yeah, yeah. Scott Dixon, Will Power, both over the age of 40. Graham Rahal is pushing 40, I believe. And even some names that you know you don't you don't think of being old or older, but I mean Joseph Newgarden. I mean he's been in the series
Mm.
now for over a decade, and
It
Alexander
creeps up on you.
Rossi. Yeah, it creeps up on you, and so this is a series where you can remain competitive for a long time, and he has a great start to his IndyCar career that could rival drivers like AJ Foyt someday in the
It's a
future.
great start being 3 championships. That's how you're kicking things off.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, as far as the teams, we'll just run down the list and get some ideas from you and on what you thought. Obviously, we'll start with Team Penske. Yee.
Thank God for Will Power in some respects because it was a brilliant recovery drive for him and much needed after the first race of the year in St. Petersburg.
Yeah,
But again, you need all your drivers near the sharp end at the start of the race, not racing towards it towards the end of the race if you're going to have any chance of at least being in contention for a title. And Newgarden made progress too, but not as much as I thought he might. And McLaughlin, as we touched on already, just a tough weekend for him all round, really. It was some
yeah,
fun beef to witness between him and DiFrancesco post race, but that's not why you're there, really, at the end of the day.
yeah,
And it just kind of reminded me of, can't remember who it was the last time out, but it was a different team, I think, or it's a continuing theme for the year, which is not good for them either way, but just a case of the good, the bad, and the ugly for Team
yeah,
Penske.
yeah. This is a team that has had, obviously didn't have a great start to the season. And now we have this
They're
where,
getting good at not having good starts to the season, aren't they?
qualifying. Yeah, well, yeah, this is the second season in a row they haven't had the best start, but at least they didn't start with negative points coming into the second race of the season. But you know, Power did the best he absolutely could. I mean, he worked his way up to sixth and gained 15 spots.
He
That
was still
was
going to that last lap as well. It was kind of he was really pushing for it. And you go,
he
he's
really
not being
was. Yeah.
content with it. He's just going to go until he
Well,
runs out of time.
he was he eighth going into that final lap, and then
Something silly like that just somehow managed to.
Kirkwood had issues and had fallen back a few spots, and then he made another on-track pass and uh, got himself a sixth place. Justin Newgarden finished 13th, which probably the best finish he could salvage. But yeah, Will Power, they didn't mention him enough during the broadcast for what he was doing out there on
Hmm.
track and gaining those spots. So Arrow McLaren, we talked about them already, but I think
It,
there's still more to be said about how their weekend went.
it just reminds me of old Scooby Doo episodes. It's like you would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for that meddling Cologne.
That's right.
It's
You
just
know,
so close and yet on the surface it looks good, and then you delve just slightly beneath the surface. You go, ooh, like we said about that. And I've got two questions for you, really. One is what happened with Nolan Siegel, and second of all, how does award fight a driver like Palou? Because it made him look like
well,
he was just in a whole other class.
to answer your first question, uh,
That's easier.
Siegel, I think, just was doing Siegel things. He's kind of the odd man out on that team.
Mm,
Obviously, Award and Lundgaard are great drivers, and they're showing it on track. And Siegel brings money, and I think that's why he's there. But
I
I
said,
will
no, no,
say,
go with your first thought.
but well, my first thought is Christian Lundgaard is surprising me. When he was announced that he was going to be moving to McLaren, I was like, guys, is this really the best option you guys could come up with? I'm like, surely you could have found somebody better than Christian Lundgaard. And I have
Rahal.
been pleasantly surprised, I will say. And he's been fun to watch the first two races of the season. So,
So, and first podium with McLaren already. So two
yeah,
races in.
that's right. So, he was just one of those drivers that was waiting for the good equipment that he needed to prove himself with. So,
So
big
the
shout
only
out to
plaque I
him.
had
So,
for him this weekend was the pre-race interview that Jack Harvey had with him, where Jack Harvey's trying to be a bit more fun about things and say that have you noticed that our the results from our pickleball games correlate to how well we perform in qualifying over a weekend. And he just got nothing out of Lundgaard, and I felt so sorry for him because he's just trying a bit of fun, and he just got nothing out of him. I was like, he's just trying to switch things up a bit, a bit of fun, and
yeah,
he's just not playing dice at all. Just kind of stone faced and serious look at him and going, "What are you asking me?" Like, no, come on.
yeah. Yeah, as far as how they're going to stop Pelot, they have to just keep doing what they're doing. They're doing what they need to do. It's just
You just hope it
they're
builds up over the course of the season, go for that consistency rather
I
than
think you're
actually being
just
able
going to
to
have
beat him in
to,
a race.
yeah, you're just going to have to build on consistency and not necessarily go out there and try to beat Pelot. And hope that Pelot has inconsistencies once we get into the dog days of summer and we're running around in circles on oval tracks. So
Have to deploy Connor Daly.
yeah, that's right. That's where now he's going to excel. Connor Daly, he's going to, yeah, he's a second half of the season kind of guy. But Andretti Global, decent weekend.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it's was when I was writing this piece that I was mentioning to you earlier about the weekend. You've got these teams there. All three of these where they've got two drivers right up there, and they've got that third one coming. Why are you here? What are you
Yep.
doing? And
Yeah.
it seems to be a different thing each weekend because it was Ericsson last week, well, not last week, the last time out, sorry, in St. Pete that was doing fine. It was Herta that was back in 16th. And you go,
Right.
you need all three of them. Not
Yeah.
going to work otherwise. You can see this already. But Herta, very nice job there, P4. Kirkwood, my fault for him dropping to P8 because I was saying during the race there I was quite happy to see him that high up in fifth. And then as soon as I said that, he started dropping down. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, mate. I've done this to you. But then Ericsson, yeah, just spun by himself, I think, was it early
Yeah.
on fresh tyres, and then
Yeah.
just
Fresh tires
didn't
and
really recover.
yeah. And I didn't go back through the pit summary for him, but I'm not sure whether um, if he pitted again after spinning on the new tires, um,
Either way, it didn't
what
do him any favours, did it?
did not do him any favors at all. Finishing 21st. Herta, that's another driver like Will Power that they just failed to mention a whole lot during the broadcast. I mean, this was a weekend where I feel like they finally got all their pit stops perfect. You know,
Hmm.
I've mentioned it on here many, many times where who knows how many wins that boy would have if it wasn't for his team strategist messing up calls on pit road. Wrong
Yeah,
tire
yeah.
strategy, bad pit stops, and just so many things that happen on pit road for him that take him out of contention. And they got it right this weekend and finished
Well,
P4. So,
I made note that it feels like this team, two races in, has made a step up from last year. It's an underlying one and maybe a bit quieter one, and they still need to get that third driver, whoever that may be, to be
right.
there with the other two. But I don't know, it just feels slightly different comparing to last season. They just seem a bit more dialed in, and I hope that can continue. And once they, like I say, figure out that third driver issue and stop giving each other turns with it and just say we can all actually go out to the front and do this together rather than sacrificing one of us for no particular reason, then maybe this is how we can beat below it, or at least give it our best shot. Let's
Yeah.
try having three drivers in the mix instead of two. Who knows?
Yeah. Another team that's having issues with that third driver is Chip Ganassi. Now, obviously, they've got a lot of things going for them to start the
I don't think they
season.
mind as much.
Yeah. Obviously, Alex Palou wins by a good margin. Scott Dixon finishing P10, slightly disappointing, I would say, for him.
Yeah, I'd say so as well. It's especially after St. Petersburg, he put on such an impressive performance there. But P10 isn't bad, but again, just for a driver of his caliber, it was a shame. But given Simpson P15, at least he's not there.
Yeah.
And
Finishes on the lead lap, gained 5 spots on the day. I mean, I'd say a solid day for Kiffin Simpson.
it's true. I think that's where the problem comes in with that team as well is that you've got those two drivers and then Kiffin Simpson, and Kiffin Simpson's been stuck in this awkward territory of constantly getting compared to these two drivers unfairly. So even when
Unfairly.
he has a
Yeah.
good weekend, it doesn't come across as much. And you and I criticize him then going, I would have not wanted to be him, but at the same time, I then immediately correct myself and go, actually, I forget that it's probably not too bad considering. But again, I go back to the question of how do you stop Hello? St. Petersburg's strategy didn't work. Thermal Club, two teammates working together ahead of him didn't work. What do you do next? I just envisage this sort of montage of attempts from everyone with some Pirates of the Caribbean style music over the top of it, of kind of this fun thing going on as everyone tries to find a way to stop him and none of it working.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But, Palou already I've got a note here. He's already got a 39-point lead over second
I
place.
misread that slightly when I first saw it. I thought he was on the 100 and whatever, and then the second place was on 39. Like, how the fuck has he managed to do that in two races? I
Yeah.
thought, okay, it's only 39 points. It's still bad,
Yeah.
but not as
I
bad as I
mean,
thought.
that's almost a full race lead after 2 races. I mean, that's
It's insane.
insane. This is the first time in 5 years we've had a winner win, a driver win back to back the first 2 races. Scott
So it
Dixon
was
did it
2020 as well, was it?
2020. Yeah, with Scott Dixon, he actually won 3 in a row to start the season. So
Don't do that.
this will be a great storyline for them to run with for the next several weeks leading up to Long Beach. So
And if he does that, Scott can go afterwards. I taught this boy everything he knows.
that's right. That's right. AJ Foyt Racing with Santino Ferrucci and David Lucas.
I've not got much to say here. I was going to ask your opinion on it because, again, it felt like a bit of an anonymous race from the pair of them, but not necessarily in too bad a way. It was just kind of where I expected, maybe.
Yeah, and they were running together the entire race. There was one point in the middle of broadcast where they were highlighting them running nose to tail and in the top 10. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair weekend for them. I think they, Ferrucci started 14th and finished 14th. Lucas started 12th, but I think that was just a strategy, tire strategy that maybe set him back a few spots. But yeah, I mean, decent weekend. Juncos Hollinger racing with Connor Daly and Stingray Robb.
Again, I was kind of going to defer to you there because I don't really have a lot of notes. I'm kind of hoping you've got something else there because, again,
Yeah,
they
I
both
think
finished. They
it
both had a
was
clean enough race.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
a good mid-pack day for them. Connor Daly obviously is more of an oval guy than a road course guy, and
it's good
just
experience for him at least to debate
yeah,
because we don't know what his career looks like for this season. It'd be nice if he could stay, and obviously we know he's good on an oval, but it would be nice
yeah,
to not just perform on those tracks specifically. So if you can just get good clean track time in, like this race, for example, where nothing really happens, that's quite beneficial. It's again the best thing you can get when you're a racing driver is seat time.
yeah. A team that did have I think was punching above their weight class this weekend was Meyer Shank.
I was very happy with them, to be
Yeah,
honest. That was just a brilliant performance. I'm really enjoying the team so far this season. And Armstrong had a really good recovery race after St. Petersburg.
hmm
And, both drives Rehnquist then was up there for both races. And you're just happy for them. It's kind of, I always look for comparisons so I know how to measure them against something that I'm more familiar with. And I kind of like Williams. It's kind of, I wasn't expecting you to be there, but I'll happily take it for as long as I can get it.
yeah. I'll jump forward in the notes just a second and highlight another team that I feel like is really on the same page right now as Meyer Shank, and that's Ed Carpenter Racing.
I was going to say the same thing.
that team has made they had a driver change with bringing Rossi in, and
and it's worked.
you knew that when it was announced that they were taking on Rossi, you just kind of knew that this is where he belongs. He's going to make a good go with this team, and
It always felt to me like it was going to go one or two ways, and you hoped it would be this one, but you dare not hope just yet, and you want to see it first, and we're seeing
yeah,
it, and it's just really nice to see because, like you say, for both teams, really solid day, and you're just looking forward to how they keep going with the season. Christian Rasmussen, he's improved from one race to the next.
mhm,
He's going to be getting a top 10 a bit more frequently, I reckon,
yeah,
if he keeps on this pace. And for two teams where you're not really in title contention, you can just go out there and drive and just enjoy
yeah.
the best of it and make headache for everyone else, which you don't really care about because why would you? You can just be out there and have fun and get the poles, get the wins, get the podiums.
That's right. Yeah. So Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan racing. Uh, this kind of had a bright spot with Graham Rahal, which we don't get to say very often.
Two bright spots, really, because I don't know about you, but I love that livery.
Yeah, it was a sharp looking car. And that team, obviously had some issues the first race out. This race could have been the same for all three, but yeah, Graham, moved up from
Yeah, but
18th
you
to
finished
11th.
ahead of Joseph Newgarden.
Right, yeah. And
Yeah.
I feel bad for Louis Foster. We gave him the hard luck award last week,
I
last race,
was going to ask you what
and
happened to him. I don't know what. I don't know if I missed something there or what, but 24th
yeah,
didn't seem to be where I thought he was for the majority of the time, and then he was just there. And I'm like, wait, wait, wait. It's kind of like real power. How did he jump this far up?
right. How did he fall that far back? Yeah, yeah. I think they did what they could with what they had. So,
Simple as
Dale,
that.
yeah, yeah. Dale Coyne Racing, Renus VK, and Jacob Abel.
I just put it down that it was a bit of a tough race for them. I mean, they finished and that was good and everything, which everyone more or less did, but I didn't have much else for them. It just felt like all the other teams and drivers, there was something going on, and maybe you'd have a silver lining a little bit like with Ray Hall. At least he had a good P11, he had a good livery. These things were going
Yeah,
on, and at least with DiFrancesco, he wouldn't have been happy with the day, but at least you get some publicity out of it because there's no such thing as bad publicity, and you get to contribute to a fun IndyCar storyline with McLaughlin. But with Dale Coyne, I was just looking around the whole time, going, I'm not sure what's going on here. I mean, Abel, I know it's only his second race, but 25th behind Schwartzman after all of his drama doesn't look
yeah.
great. And VK, I think we've just got used to expecting more, even if he is in
Mhm.
not the team necessarily that can give him everything he needs. But again, 17 just felt, I don't know, I felt wanting more.
Yeah, Renus VK, he was that very last driver signed to the series this year, and kind of came out of left field, the week before St. Pete that he was going to be racing full time. Surprise! And I think he's shown people why he deserves to be in the series. I mean, he had a great first race. This race was just kind of let's make it through the weekend, but still finished 17th and on the lead lap, which is, in a lot of cases for these smaller teams, that's a victory on its own. So
True, true. This is why I defer to you on these sorts of things because like
yeah.
there'll be more of a silver lining he can find. I'm used to being just a lot more harsh.
And then we come to Prima.
I don't need to be harsh on them. They do it to themselves.
Ah, gosh, I mean, we talked at length about what happened with Robert Schwartzman uh, uh, at the beginning of the weekend, and then Callum Ilott having issues with overheating on his hybrid system. You know, when you see new teams arrive in IndyCar, it's usually a small outfit. It's a guy who just had some money, had a love for the sport, thought, you know what, I'm going to put together this team and we're going to
Hmm.
go run the 500, maybe a couple other races throughout the year. And they stick around for a few seasons and then they're gone. With Prema, this is an established team. This is a team that, yeah, they're new to IndyCar, but they've been in the racing world for how many decades now? You know,
Yes.
for them to be able to not figure it out
it's
Yeah,
one of those
it's
things
just
because some elements of it you think, is this just them getting all their bad luck and their bad juju out of the way immediately? Hopefully so. And I also look at them and go, I hope this isn't an omen for Cadillac in F1 next year. If we've got someone who's actually coming in, doing everything right as they should be, they're following all the rules, all the regulations, da 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 da, tick box, tick box, tick box. Let's
yeah.
bring in some solid, young but experienced drivers. Let them go. We know what we're doing. Like you say, we've been around motorsport for a couple of minutes, and yet, and I just go, please don't let this be an omen for F1 for next year. Because after all of that, for them to be them having a PREMA situation, you go, I don't need that twice. It's painful enough this time.
It just, they brought in, Callum Ilott, who's a veteran in IndyCar, has, you know, many races under his belt, and had shown signs of being a good driver. And I know he's a good driver. And Robert Schwartzman, obviously, we know him from his time coming up through, you know, F1, F2, F3, but those are two drivers that should be capable of handling an Indy car around a track,
And
and
and I
the
feel if
team
their
is not getting it together.
fortunes, yeah,
Yeah.
I fear if their fortunes don't turn around through no fault necessarily of Schwartzman, he's going to get the boot because this felt to me like he's been around for a while now without doing too much of anything. That this is his season to re-establish himself, show why he deserves to be there, and given no fault of his own so far, his car
Yeah.
just keeps falling apart in different
Right.
ways. If it's not your radio, it's your engine is melting the inside of your car and throwing ethanol over you to try
Yeah.
and literally kill you.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there going, "What? Who was I in a former life that I've carried this much bad karma over?" And yeah, they'll be a team very much hoping third time's the charm in Long Beach.
So who had the hot weekend for you?
Initially, willpower, just because he did a really nice recovery drive. You compare it to St. Pete like we did, and he needed that, but also because I have him in my fantasy IndyCar team and I needed him to do well.
Well, then
And
you had a great
I,
weekend then.
oh yeah, I had a lot better weekend this weekend for Thermal Club than I did in St. Pete when I had about three DNFs immediately and went, oh, for
Yeah.
Christ's sake. Which you'll be pleased to know I had the same bad luck from St. Pete I had in Australia for the F1. I had five drivers, four of them DNF'd.
Ooh.
And the fifth one was Hulkenberg, so it was like good, but not who I thought I'd be
Not
relying on for the points here. Uh, but I think a shout out has to go, and I think you'll pretty much agree here as well with both ECR and Meyer Shank Racing because they
Yeah.
to make the F1 comparison, they're the stake in Williams in a way of we don't know how long you're going to be up here for, but we're enjoying
Yeah.
that you're back in the
We're
show and
having
that
fun
you're
while
going
you're
for it.
here. That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
you can just get on with driving each weekend. You can do what every driver wants to do best and just drive
Yeah.
and not have to worry about anything else. And that gives you a freedom that teams who are more likely to be in for a fight for the championship have all the additional woes and worries to go with it, whereas they can just get on with things and have a nice weekend and go home afterwards to go, if that went well, excellent. If not, yeah, it's a shame, but
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
probably doing better than where we thought we would be, so we'll
That's
take it.
right. For me, I'm taking the easy, safe way out and going with Pillow. Great
It's not
weekend
hard to
for
see
him.
why.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and uh, Willpower definitely had a great weekend, but you couldn't have asked for anything more from Alex. Absolutely great run for him there the second half of the race. For me, on the flip side though, my not hot, I've got two things listed here, and one is Team Penske, and
Excluding willpower.
excluding Willpower, yes.
I know the qualifying wasn't there either, so I might as well
Qualifying
go
is
back on that
really
one.
the reason why I'm bringing them in. With the uh, you know poor performance in qualifying for all three teams. Willpower was able to recover and sneak his way into the top 10, but yeah, I mean that was about as bad of a weekend as you could think of, short of
It,
all
it,
three
it
of your drivers crashing out in the beginning of the race.
it
But
goes back to what I was saying on an F1 podcast. It goes back to the fundamentals. You've got to get those right when you're that kind of a team. You kind of if you are ECR, if you are Dale Coyne, you can be forgiven a little bit. You're given some latitude there, but when you're Penske, when you're Andretti, when you're a McLaren, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
you're not going to be patient with them for very long because
Right.
you know what you're doing,
Yeah.
And if you can't tie your shoelaces up properly before you head onto the basketball court, you can't be then wondering later why you kept tripping over.
That's right. That's a good, great way of putting it. So, I also have the hybrid system listed on here. Uh,
It's nice
I
for us to
kind
have
of,
disagreements.
I
It's
kind of
boring
feel like,
otherwise.
yeah. I mean, I'm glad that the guys on the IndyCar radio network are acknowledging that this might have been a mistake. You
I
know,
do appreciate that they're able to say that as well, because you'd see in other sports where you give any criticism to the series that you're literally commenting and representing, and it wouldn't go down well at all. But I like that there is that openness that you can just at least question it, without fear of retribution.
well, this is what the 10th race that we've had with the hybrid now,
About that,
and and it just feels like every race somebody has an issue with the hybrid system. It should not be that way, especially with as much testing as we did with that system. I mean, they've been
I'll concede that point. Yeah,
working on it for a year and a half, 2 years in testing before they launched it mid-season. Uh, should
it
be
does make me
better.
question again the judgment call to launch it mid-season instead of maybe waiting to the start of this season. Give them that extra. If you're testing for a year and a half and doing all about mileage anyway, why not
Well,
do the
we
extra bit
we
and
already
see if you
gave
can
them an
tease out
extra.
some leads?
We already gave them
I
half the
know.
season last year. I mean, we were supposed to have it at the beginning of last season, and we pushed it back, and still didn't work out all the bugs. So we'll see how that. Like I mentioned earlier, if they're having trouble keeping it cool in hot weather, what's going to happen when we're in Indianapolis at the end of May when it can be 95 degrees? What's going to
This is
happen
how
when
we
we
get
go?
Kyle Larson to win just by keeping it cool and steady the whole time and just cruising near the back, waiting for everyone to drop like flies.
What happens when we get to Iowa and we run a doubleheader there and it's 90 degrees? So you know, uh, it's going to be tough to see where that goes the rest of the season, I think. But we didn't. I didn't put it on the notes, but hard luck. We had one last week in the last
Oh
race with
yes.
Louis Foster. I think this week, I think we kind of have to.
I,
I don't
I
want to
can
say
probably
we.
combine my hard luck with my not hot person at the same thing of Marcus Ericsson. It's kind of
Oh yeah.
unfortunate that you've been out by yourself with a hard luck there that you can't recover, but you've only got yourself to blame for the hard luck in some respects. But I think I might know who you're going to go with.
Well, Robert Schwartzman
Thought so.
obviously had a bad go at it, but honestly, I think Louis Foster again. I might be,
Let's stick with
but Scott McLaughlin. I think with him having the hybrid issue, having to sit on pit road, then having the hybrid issue again, and saying, you know what, this is it, we're done, we're parking it, and not being able to finish the race. He was our only DNF in the race,
Hmm.
and I think they tried limping it home and just didn't, it just wasn't there in the cards for
Hello
him.
keeps
So
going past me going, have I done this already?
yeah. So, but I think that wraps it up for the week.
Yeah, we've got
I
Long Beach coming up,
got
which I'm looking
long,
forward to. I've
yeah,
not
Long
witnessed a
Beach.
bad race there just yet, and yeah, it's nice that we have these little breaks. I don't mind them as much at the moment because I know that later on in the season everything starts bunching together and it's going to be a lot in one go. They both everything I watch seems to do that. You kind of have the nice spaced out first start of the season, and then everyone goes, "Oh, we've got to get all these races in. Ooh, let's bam, 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 bam them all in." So I kind of enjoy this easy start to it.
Yeah, you've got to clear your calendar for the month of May to be able to
Hmm.
consume everything in IndyCar because you've got Alabama to kick off the month, and then we turn around the very next weekend where Indianapolis on the road course. Then you have a whole week of practice on the oval, and then you have qualifying weekend for the 500, and then the 500. So uh,
So we're seeing
uh,
a lot more of each other.
that's right. So, but yes, as you mentioned, we got the next race is the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach on April 13th. Race is a little bit later in the afternoon than I would have liked, but we got a 4:30 start time, Eastern Standard Time. Check local listings. That'll be what, a, a nighttime race for you. Hopefully, you can stay awake.
Double check this time because I almost made the mistake of reading the time as 3 p.m. Californian time, not Eastern time, but it started and nearly came into the race 3 hours late and missed the whole damn thing. So I'm very glad I didn't do that.
Yeah, make sure to check local listings. So, all right, folks. Well, we will see you next time. We appreciate you tuning in for On the Curbs IndyCar.